It's been a while since season 2 of the One Piece live action dropped, and honestly, it was about time I made a video about it. So, is it good or is it bad? And most importantly, is the series actually improving or is it starting to lose what made season 1 work? Today, I want to talk about everything I liked about this season and everything that almost made me cancel my Netflix subscription, so let's begin, shall we? Season 2 covers the story from Loguetown all the way to Drum Island, and one of the first things I genuinely liked was the introduction of Bartolomeo Kuma. This was an original change from the source material, but surprisingly it worked really well. Considering we will probably never make it all the way to Dressrosa in live action, bringing Barto in earlier was actually a smart move. And since he was canonically in Loguetown during the Straw Hats' time there, it doesn't feel completely random either. I liked seeing him used as a side character whose perspective slowly changes because of Luffy. It's a solid way to show just how much influence Luffy has on the people around him. Now, did it feel a little forced at times? Yeah, definitely, but I'll get to that later. Another small change I liked even more was Luffy singing Bing Sake to Laboon. That scene was such a nice touch and the little brook tease was even better. Just like with Bartu, I seriously doubt we'll ever reach Trevor Bark, so this felt like writers giving fans a little gift while they still can. And speaking of fan service, this season was packed with Easter eggs. We got Nika and Loki's wooden sculptures in Little Garden, Sabo appearing with Dragon, and even the God Valley was mentioned. These details were clearly added for longtime fans, and honestly, I love that. It feels like the writers actually understand what people love about One Piece beyond just the main plot. I'm sure there were many more references I missed too, so if you spotted any, let me know in the comments. Another change I think was genuinely great was Smoker and Tashigi investigating Baroque works. Yes, we know this technically happened in canon, but the manga and anime never actually showed it, and in live action this works even better in my opinion. It makes Baroque works feel like an actual threat. In the anime and manga, outside of Crocodile and Robin, Baroque works honestly felt like a bunch of fodders just roaming around. Here, they actually feel dangerous. That extra focus makes the organization feel way more intimidating, which raises the stakes for the entire season. Also, the CGI is obviously much better this time around, but considering the budget increase from season 1, that was expected, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. Now, one of my favorite episodes this season was Zoro fighting 100 Baroque Works agents, and yes, they actually committed to the bit. When I first heard they were really doing all 100s, I thought there was no way, so while watching, I actually counted, and somehow it was really 100. The choreography in that fight was insane. The camera work was sharp, the angles made every hit feel impactful, and the whole sequence just looked incredible. And most importantly, they didn't rush it. They gave that fight over half an episode, which I know some people might complain about, but personally, I will never complain about a well done fight scene. Especially after season 1, where the fights were honestly one of the weaker parts of the show. Watching this, I was just sitting there with my mouth open. The entire sequence felt like the production team saying, "Yeah, we learned from last time." And honestly, it shows. The next great change was Mr. Tree. The actor who played him deserves a lot of praise for his performance. In the original story, Mr. Tree was mostly comic relief, and I don't think anyone ever really took him seriously. But here, he was genuinely creepy. His obsession with seeing himself as an artist and believing that creating art is the only thing that truly matters gave him a much darker and more unsettling vibe. That more psychotic approach was a really smart change in my opinion. In the manga, I always found him to be pretty boring character who actually made Little Garden less enjoyable, but in the live action, he suddenly became intriguing, which completely caught me off guard. It reminded me a lot of what they did with Buggy in season 1, and for a live action format, I think that was an excellent creative decision. And speaking of Little Garden, I can't leave the little character arc they gave Usopp. It's something that we missed in the first season, and that's why he felt like the Straw Hat with the least amount of resolve from the crew, and the only one who was just going along with them without a goal. That's why I was very happy to see them giving him some development and inspiration for him to become a brave warrior, as he says. It's a small detail that easily could be missed, but I'm glad they didn't. Now, let's talk about Drum Island. This arc had both the best and the worst moments of the entire season, but I want to start with what surprisingly became my favorite part of the season, our little reindeer, Chopper. I had serious doubts about how they would adapt him into live action, but aside from his slightly awkward looking human form, he was incredible. Every scene with him was full of emotion, and every interaction perfectly showed the fear and insecurity he has around humans. Even his stutter made him even more adorable. I genuinely think they outdid themselves with Chopper this season. And if we are talking about Chopper, we can't ignore his backstory, which might feature the best acting in the entire series so far. The actor who played Hiruruk absolutely nailed the role, and what impresses me even more is that they didn't rush that part at all, which was one of my biggest concerns going on. Not only that, but they managed to recreate one of the best scenes in One Piece, Hiruruk's speech before his death, with incredible accuracy, maybe even improving on the original. My eyes were full of tears during that scene, and honestly, I don't even know if they were tears of sadness because of how emotional it was, or tears of joy because of how proud I felt seeing something I love so much brought to life in such a respectful and powerful way. Now that we've talked about what was good about the new season, let me put my judge glasses on for a bit and talk about the things I disliked. Let's start with one thing that really bothered me throughout the whole season, and that was the scale, or more specifically, the inconsistency of the power levels. In the source material, Luffy and Zoro didn't really struggle against the villains from the beginning of the Grand Line all the way up to Alabasta. But here, they struggle a lot. Luffy and Zoro literally run away from Mr. Five and Miss Valentine even though they one-shotted them in both the manga and the anime. Luffy struggles against Wapol, which is honestly really hard to believe, and Zoro gets overwhelmed by those creatures Wapol created and almost loses. Don't get me wrong, I understand why the live action does this. They want the fights to feel more dramatic and intense, but I honestly think this decision could hurt the series later on. Think about it like this: if Luffy struggles against Wapol, who is probably one of the weakest villains in the entire series, and the next week he goes and beats Crocodile in Alabasta, even if it takes more effort, doesn't that make the gap between Wapol and Crocodile feel way smaller than it actually is? Because in reality, those two characters are not even remotely comparable in strength. Maybe I'm overreacting a little, but it genuinely bothered me. The next thing that made me question what they were doing was the decision to make Robin look really evil. She kills Marines with a smile on her face, mocks Vivi for not being able to save her kingdom, and overall seems like she enjoys being cruel. Now, the actress did a solid job. I actually liked her performance. The problem is that Robin joins the Straw Hats right after Alabasta, and this portrayal kind of contradicts her entire character. Robin was always mysterious and intimidating, but she was never this sinister. They pushed it a bit too far in my opinion. The next thing I want to talk about might actually be the worst decision in the whole season, and you probably already guessed it, and yeah, it was the monster Swappo created. First of all, what was even his motivation here? Was he trying to take back his throne? Because if that's the case, then why send monsters to destroy the kingdom and kill its people? If they actually succeeded, there wouldn't even be a kingdom left for Wapol to rule. That whole thing just creates contradictions in the plot. I know the writers probably added this to raise the stakes for the season finale, but the execution was so fucking terrible. His whole army, if I can call it that, barely even felt like an army. We only saw like 5 or 6 creatures total, and the CGI, man, oh my god, the CGI was horrendous. Every time those things appeared on screen, they made the entire arc look worse. Which is really sad because if you remove that whole monster subplot, I would honestly say Drum Island was probably the best arc in the live action so far. What makes it even more frustrating than it is that they absolutely nailed Chopper's CGI. Chopper looked fantastic, so it's weird that they made those original monster design look so bad at the same time. Every scene with them just left a bad taste in my mouth. And the last thing I want to mention isn't necessarily something bad, but more something I personally miss from the original series: Luffy's natural charisma and the way he changes people around him. I don't blame Inaki for that, and I'm not saying he's a bad actor either. Honestly, I think they couldn't have cast a better Luffy. He perfectly captured Luffy's goofy and carefree personality, and from interviews you can clearly tell how much he cares about the role and the series itself. My issue is more with how the writing handles Luffy's influence on people. In the anime and manga, people naturally start gravitating toward Luffy because of the way he acts and the way he lives. It feels organic, but in the live action, it sometimes feels forced. Like Bartu immediately idolizing Luffy, or Nami constantly telling Vivi Luffy changes people, and yes, it is true, but it feels like the show keeps telling us instead of letting us naturally feel it ourselves. And honestly, I don't even fully blame the adaptation for that. I think Luffy's ability to naturally inspire people is just something extremely difficult to recreate in live action. In anime and manga, moments like that feel natural because the world itself is more exaggerated and emotional. In live action, it's much harder to make that same feeling work without it coming across as scripted. So no, I don't blame Inaki for it at all. It's just one of those things I personally miss from the original story, even if it might honestly be impossible to fully recreate on screen. So, overall, was this season better than the previous one? Yes, definitely. I think they fixed a lot of the problems season 1 had, and the production quality is massively better too. The pacing is also improved a lot. The biggest issue for me was some of the original changes they decided to make. Some of them were actually really good, but the bad ones were outrageously bad. Still, considering that One Piece is probably one of the hardest story ever to adapt into a live action, I think they did a really solid job. And honestly, I can't wait to see the next season. I was Mugen, and until next time.